In the 15th century, what the Aztecs met was not a war with the Spanish, but a trade, a landing of the Chinese. Why did two civilizations from opposite ends of the earth come to cross? Was it because of a storm? A single decision? What the Chinese had seen in the past truly went beyond their understanding until they came to know Tenochtitlan. So, what really happened? Beijing, 1424. A committee of men in silk robes sits around a low lacquered table inside the Forbidden City. Lantern light flickers across stacks of account books and maps of distant oceans. The maintenance of the great treasure fleets drains the imperial treasury as 1,000 rivers empty into the boundless sea. Further expeditions to the barbarian lands beyond the horizon promise uncertain tribute and unclear benefit to the Dragon Throne. Thus, by imperial decree, the magnificent voyages of Zheng are hereby terminated. The men in the room sign the documents with practiced strokes. They stamp them with the imperial seal. They go home to their wives and households, believing they have done nothing more than balance a ledger. None of them understand what they have just decided. They believe they are protecting the dynasty from waste and eunuch ambition. They are, in fact, choosing a language for the countless millions yet to be born across 2 continents. A god for civilizations not yet conquered, a version of history that will be taught in schools 5 centuries later as though it were the only version that could have existed. 70 years pass. A different fleet from a different continent sets sail with 3 small ships and a man named Columbus. The rest is the world that exists today. But there is another world, one that almost happened. In 1371, in the remote province of Yunnan, a boy named Ma He is born into a devout Muslim family. His father and grandfather had both made the perilous pilgrimage to Mecca. The family carried 2 worlds, Chinese and Islamic, not as conflicting identities, but as complementary threads in the same tapestry. At 10 years old, the soldiers of the rising Ming dynasty arrive. Yunnan is the last pocket of Mongol resistance. The army captured young boys and forced them to serve in the royal court. Ma He survives. He grows into a giant, over 6 feet tall, in an era when most men stood 5'6". His physical presence alone commands silence. But it is his mind that truly elevates him. Exceptionally intelligent, politically astute, and relentlessly loyal, he earns the absolute trust of an ambitious prince named Zhu Di. When Zhu Di seizes the throne in a bloody civil war and becomes the Yongle Emperor, he renames his most trusted eunuch, Zheng He. The commission the emperor gives him has no precedent in human history. 317 ships, 27,800 men. Between 1405 and 1433, Zheng He leads 7 voyages. He reaches the Persian Gulf, the Red Sea, and the east coast of Africa, 10,000 kilometers from home. He brings back giraffes that the imperial court identifies as the mythical Qilin, symbols of a virtuous reign. 30 kingdoms send tribute. The greatest navy the world had ever seen, at its peak, 3,500 ships, dwarfs anything Europe will possess for centuries. In 1421, even as Zheng departs on his 6th voyage, Mongol threats along the northern border intensify. The emperor moves the capital from Nanjing to Beijing, closer to the steppe, closer to danger. The money that once funded 300 treasure ships is redirected north, to walls, to cavalry, to the eternal defensive problem that had shaped Chinese strategy for 2 centuries. In 1449, Mongol cavalry will ambush and capture the emperor himself, less than a day's march from Beijing. The evidence of the era suggests the limits of Chinese maritime ambition clearly. The most ambitious seafarers in China spent decades trying to settle Taiwan, an island visible from the mainland on a clear day. They barely succeeded. If even that proved difficult, a systematic crossing of the Pacific was almost unimaginable. A civilization under existential pressure from the north made a rational decision to pull inward, rational and world-changing. The opportunity to the east was the most consequential geographical discovery in human history. They did not know that. How could they? But in this other world, the one that almost happened, the decision goes differently. Not because the committee has a change of heart, because one ship on the 6th voyage, pushed by storms and following the Kuroshio current further east than any Chinese vessel has sailed before, finds something. And the report that returns to Beijing changes everything. In 1450, the most advanced city on Earth is not in Europe. It is not in China. It is Tenochtitlan, the shimmering capital of the Aztec Empire, rising like a mirage from the waters of Lake Texcoco in the Valley of Mexico. Built on artificial islands called chinampas, floating gardens of extraordinary fertility, the city is connected to the mainland by 3 majestic causeways, wide enough for 10 horsemen to ride abreast. 2 great aqueducts bring fresh water from distant springs. Canoes glide along a grid of canals, carrying people and goods in a constant, orderly flow. At its height, Tenochtitlan houses between 200,000 and 400,000 people, far larger than any European city of the time. The great marketplace at Tlatelolco operates every 5 days and draws up to 60,000 traders. Spanish observers later describe it with awe. Every commodity imaginable, gold, jade, feathers, cacao, slaves, exotic birds, woven cotton, arranged in perfect order. At the heart of the city stands the sacred precinct, enclosed by serpent walls, containing the towering Templo Mayor, dedicated to Huitzilopochtli and Tlaloc. Palaces of the emperor and nobles boast gardens, aviaries and zoos. Neighborhoods called Kalpuli House, craftsmen, farmers, warriors and priests, each with its own local temple and market. This is not a primitive settlement. This is a peer civilization, one that, in isolation from Eurasia, developed its own mathematics, astronomy, architecture, agriculture, and complex political structures in under 200 years. The Aztec Empire itself was founded only in 1325. Everything Cortés would see in 1519 was built in that astonishingly short span. This is what Zheng He's fleet would have encountered had the men in that Beijing room in 1424 decided differently. China and Europe shared the same Old World disease pool. Smallpox, measles, influenza, mumps, diphtheria, and typhus were all well established in China by the late 1400s, connected across millennia by the Silk Road. Biologically, a Chinese sailor and a Portuguese sailor posed the exact same pathogenic risks. Pathogens do not require encomienda plantations or transatlantic slave ships to spread. The sophisticated coastal trade networks stretching from the Pacific Northwest to Mesoamerica, the very pride of native societies, with routes carrying obsidian, shells, copper and furs across thousands of miles, would have become rapid highways of infection. It would only take a single infected Ming crew trading silk and porcelain for obsidian and furs along the California coast, or a diplomatic mission reaching the Valley of Mexico to ignite a continental pandemic. The catastrophic demographic collapse of the Americas was first and foremost a tragedy of biology. Virgin soil epidemics against populations with zero prior exposure and no immunity. It still would have occurred, it just would have happened 70 years earlier. Yet that 70-year head start is precisely what changes everything that follows. The Kuroshio Current does not ask permission. It sweeps east across the Pacific and carries whatever it catches to the same place, the forested coastline of the northern Pacific. This is where the fleet first makes landfall, among the cedar forests and salmon rivers of the Pacific Northwest, among the Chinook, the Coast Salish, and the peoples of the California coast. The Ming commanders assess what they find with the cold logic of the tributary system, a system designed not for conquest in the abstract, but to plug into existing power. Here, there is no ruler. The peoples of this coast are prosperous and proud, but dispersed with 1,000 villages, no single throne, no center whose submission would mean anything in Beijing. The fleet charts the coastline, it trades where trading is possible, and then it continues south, looking for what it actually came to find. What they leaves behind, they does not know what they are leaving. In the breath of a crewman bartering silk for sea otter pelts, in a handshake between an envoy and a coastal chief, something invisible passes between worlds and begins quietly to move south through the same trade routes that have always connected these peoples, faster than any ship, ahead of the fleet all the way to the Valley of Mexico. This is the city Beijing did not believe could exist. Now it rises before the Ming commanders, real and vast, and for a long moment no one gives an order. These are men who have anchored off 30 kingdoms, who have seen Calicut and Hormuz and the stone cities of the Swahili coast. Men not easily impressed. They are impressed. After a year of empty northern shores, of prosperous villages with no king worth the name, they understand at once what they are looking at. Not a tribe to be catalogued, but a peer, a center, the thing they crossed an ocean to find. At first, contact is almost courteous. The Ming envoys present silk, porcelain, lacquerware, and iron tools. They perform the ritual of the tributary system. The Aztec emperor is invited to acknowledge the supremacy of the Son of Heaven. In return, the Chinese receive gold, jade, feathers, cacao, and promises of friendship. Gunpowder weapons and advanced shipbuilding knowledge are demonstrated as gifts of prestige. trade begins, diplomatic missions are exchanged. For a time, both civilizations see advantage in the other. But the tributary system was never built for equality. The envoys note the silver in the temple ornaments, the gold worked into everyday things, the fertile black soil of the Shinampas. The reports sail back across the Pacific, and in Beijing, the tone shifts. The friendship was real, and it was also the first page of a ledger. A map was being redrawn. The Aztec did not know. They were already on it.